Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Monday to you. Welcome to Let's Talk Tropics, a live discussion on tropical weather and anything that's going on out in the Atlantic or sometimes the Pacific Basin. But for the most part, we concentrate on the Atlantic Basin. And we've got a new tropical system that kind of fired up over the weekend, but wasn't really unexpected either, as we talked a lot about this as we left you late last week. Potential tropical cyclone number 5, which most likely will become a tropical depression later today or tonight, and then eventually we think this is going to be Hurricane Ernesto in the next coming days. Right now it does not look like it's going to be affecting the Gulf, but we'll look for anything else that might be threatening here over the next couple of weeks. Real quick, wanted to show you what was going on here at home. We are holding at 95 degrees, but it feels like 106. Those dew points are coming back up. I know you enjoyed the lower humidities over the weekend. I sure did. I spent more time outside on the back patio and playing around in the garden this weekend than I have in quite some time. And what a refreshing change to have in the middle part of August. And I think we might have another one of those coming in here maybe about a week to 10 days from now if the models continue to hold strong. And again, we've got a lot of sunshine out there. We're mixing with a bit of cloudiness, but it is somewhat hazy out there too. And those temperatures are expected to hit the upper 90s. And as far as any rain, I think the bulk of the action is going to stay out here in the offshore waters, although I wouldn't be surprised to see a few widely scattered showers, perhaps kind of firing up here with the afternoon sea breeze and working their way inland. So there is a possibility, and that's why I've kept that rain chance there at about 20%. So let's get right to it. Potential tropical cyclone number 5 is currently over the Atlantic Ocean. I'm pulling up the Caribbean satellite here as we can see a little bit better of what's going on in this particular region. Reconnaissance aircraft were out there this morning. There's another flight that's out there right now doing some investigations, and most likely we think we're going to have a tropical depression here very, very soon, which again isn't surprising as we've been watching this tropical wave since late last week, and most of the models have been indicating a tropical system developing. And believe it or not, most of the models are still very much in agreement, not just with the track, but also with the intensity forecast. And there's an even closer view of the tropical wave that's continuing to move off toward the west. And you can kind of see the Leeward Islands here in the foreground, right here over here on the left, are the Leeward Islands. And we also already have tropical storm warnings that are posted for those islands, as well as the British and U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Everything under a tropical storm warning now, as we're expecting tropical storm conditions to come into that region sometime in the next maybe 48 or 36 to 48 hours rather. This is moving off to the west very rapidly at 26 miles per hour. It's currently located at 15.1 north and 54.6 west. Winds are up to 35, so it's up to tropical depression strength, although reconnaissance aircraft haven't been able to find the closed low-level circulation just yet, so it's still potential tropical cyclone number 5. Pressure's been holding steady at around 10:09 to 10:10 over the last day or so as this wave has drifted off toward the west. But as you can see, the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center brings us up to hurricane strength, where Bermuda may be in the crosshairs sometime this upcoming weekend, but it does appear that the Bahamas and much of the East Coast may be in the clear now of what could become Hurricane Ernesto. And there's a look at the cluster of the hurricane models when it comes to forecast track. Again, very good agreement here, some a little to the right, some a little bit to the left, but for the most part, they've all clustered together there over the far western part of the Atlantic. And as far as the intensity forecasts, just about every model is now going with strong tropical storm, if not Category 1 hurricane. This is the 3-day line right here, and you can see that pretty much all of the models here are pushing into the strong tropical storm, lower in Category 1 hurricane. And then in days 4 and 5, virtually all of the models are now in that hurricane strength status. They are anywhere from Category 1 to Category 2, and a couple of them here going up to Category 3. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen there. There's a little bit of wind shear that's kind of pushing on it right now, light to moderate wind shear. So some slow strengthening is pretty likely here for what will, we think, become Hurricane Ernesto. So let's just go through the model suite here. And again, the GFS has more of a southerly track initially, perhaps going south of Puerto Rico and then coming more due north after that and pulling off into the Atlantic as a hurricane. Euro is pretty similar, although it keeps the center of circulation a little bit farther to the north of Puerto Rico and then takes a pretty hard northward turn and then pushes back out to the northeast in response to a trough that will be coming off the eastern coast of the U.S., as well as a ridge of high pressure over the Atlantic starting to back out of the way. The Canadian model is the farthest to the north, I would say, and then making that turn again. It's also the most intense, which is pretty common for what we see with the Canadian model. And the Icon model is the weakest right now. It's a little bit closer in the track with the GFS, pushing it more over Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and perhaps over the far eastern Bahamas. And then for a while, the Icon model gets kind of close to the Carolina coast before making its turn off toward the northeast. I think with a ridge of high pressure pushing off the east into the eastern part of the Atlantic, as well as several troughs that are going to be moving off the northeastern part of the North American continent, that should take most of our tropical systems and kind of shove them northward and pretty much keep the Gulf of Mexico and the western part of the Caribbean free and clear of any activity. Again, there is our tropical wave, or our potential tropical cyclone number 5. You can see there's some wind shear here to the north of that, but I think that's going to go ahead and move out of the way. So we may see some fairly light to moderate wind shear that will continue in the development zone here over the next couple of days. And then I think maybe some of this lighter wind shear here will be shifting in this particular area. So if we keep the wind shear fairly light, it'll have a much better chance for development over the next couple of days. Water temperatures, of course, are fine to sustain any tropical systems. Anything that's there over about 26 degrees Celsius, which is anything yellow, orange, red, or pink, that will sustain a tropical system, because those are waters that are over 80 degrees or over 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, shear is going to be the inhibiting factor, but it does appear that the shear is going to back off and the water temperatures are just fine, and there's a lot of heat potential. That water goes 80-degree water goes pretty deep as well. Check it out. Here is the Gulf of Mexico, and I'm not expecting any tropical systems to worry about here over the Gulf over the next several days, which is great news for us. And as far as the winds and seas, they're going to be fairly light out of the south. We've got a frontal boundary that's kind of dissolving along the coast, and those southerly winds are kicking back in, which is why we've got the higher dew points that are starting to push in here, and why it's going to feel more like typical summer heat and humidity here for most of this week. That break we had with the lower humidity is gone, but I do think farther down the road we may see another trough digging southward that could potentially bring us another shot of some slightly cooler and slightly drier air. Meanwhile, here in the Central American region, we had a tropical wave that's kind of moving westward, and I think we might have a little chance for some development in that particular region, but that would be on the Pacific side and shouldn't bother us here at home. And as far as the remainder of the tropical Atlantic satellite, we've got another tropical wave that's out here and a pretty good trough that's going to be pushing off the African coast here over the next couple of days. But last week, most of the models had a parade of systems. We had what was 98L, which is now potential tropical cyclone number 5, and then the models were kind of picking up on these other tropical waves, but I will say that the models seem to have backed off a little bit, but they may be back online tomorrow, and I still think we're going to see a few of these tropical waves coming off the African coast, and I think some of them will have the potential. But as long as that ridge of high pressure stays farther to the east out here, and we start to get more of these troughs to come off the North American continent, I think most of the action that would be out here would probably squeeze out and stay over the Atlantic Ocean and not get into the Gulf of Mexico or the western part of the Caribbean. So for about the next week to 10 days, folks, I think that we're pretty safe here along the Gulf Coast. The only thing I could see is if we were to get some kind of a rogue front to kind of push southward and then stall over the northern Gulf of Mexico. Occasionally you can get a low to develop along those fronts, but I don't see that either. So I really think that the far eastern Atlantic is not going to be really much of a worry for us here along the Gulf Coast. But August is a very busy month, and generally, as we talked about last week, we average about 15 to 16 named storms between now and the end of the hurricane season, at least if we go with the average of the past 5 years. And during the month of August, basically all of the Atlantic Ocean is open for business, with a higher concentration of activity crossing over right about where PTC number 5 is. And we also have a lot of activity that crosses in the Atlantic Ocean. Some gets in the Gulf and the Western Caribbean, which is kind of the pattern that we're seeing right now, with most of the action staying over the Atlantic Ocean. At the same time, we're heading toward the peak of the hurricane season, which is now less than a month away. September the 10th is generally considered the peak of the hurricane season, but about 60 to 70% of all of our tropical systems will happen between now and the middle part of October. And I did want to go over too that NOAA also revising their hurricane update, just like Colorado State did earlier last week. This coming down on Thursday. But they really have not changed their numbers at all. They're still going with a 90% chance that this will be an above normal season. We only got to reach 14 named storms to do that, and I think we're going to be able to easily do that. But they are still calling for anywhere between 17 and 24 named storms, with 8 to 13 of those becoming hurricanes, which would be right on par with what the average was for the last several years. Average is about 15 to 16, so 17 is on the low end of the named storms. We've already got 4 under our belt, so if we get 15, we're up to 19, so we're well within that range predicted by the National Hurricane Center and NOAA as well, which is why I always say on Mondays, make sure you've got that hurricane plan together. These are the items that you would need to have. These are just the basics. Batteries, flashlights, water, and non-perishable food. All of that stuff is out at the stores right now. You can get those without having to fight any of the crowds. Make sure your first aid kit is stocked up. Make sure you know how much prescription medicine you have, and if you would need refills in case you had to evacuate. Personal hygiene and cleaners are always good to have on hand, and you'll need more of those, especially if we have a hurricane striking. You're probably going to stay much cleaner when you're all sweaty when there's no electricity out there. IDs, insurance, important papers, keep those all in a watertight container and in one place where you can grab and go, where you know where everything is. And better yet, save everything as digital by taking pictures and storing those on your cell phone. Have a basic tool set, and make sure you have plenty of supplies and entertainment for your children, as well as your pet supplies too, in case you have to evacuate. So those are just a handful of things that you can be doing right now while the weather is quiet. And really for the next week to 10 days, I don't think we have a whole lot to worry about here along the Gulf Coast. So we'll just continue to monitor the other tropical waves that are happening out in the Atlantic Ocean. Any updates that happen to come along with potential tropical cyclone number 5, I will post on my social media pages. If you are on Facebook, you can just look up Dave Baker or Dave Baker Acadiana Weather Today, or at Meteorologist Dave Baker. All of those will get you to the pages that you need to go to. And if you're on Twitter, or X if you want to call it that, X Twitter, we're looking at Dave Baker TV is my handle there, and I will post all of the updates on social media between now and early tomorrow morning. Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. I enjoy hanging out with everybody each and every weekday afternoon. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on those notifications. That way you know when the morning weather forecast drops at around 7:30 and when Let's Talk Tropics pops up live here at noon on Acadiana Weather Today. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. I hope you have a great Monday afternoon, and I will see you on Tuesday.